Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. I just got off the phone with a friend and I thought I would shoot a video based on the conversation I had because I think this happens a lot. I was talking to him, we were talking about fishing because that's what we always talk about. And he was frustrated because he was out, it was a winter day, he was expecting to catch more fish, he was fishing around rock, and he just was surprised he didn't catch anything. And, we started talking a little bit about it. And I thought it was interesting to me how he just thought because he was fishing rock, he would be catching more fish. And rock is a great thing to fish during the winter, especially on a nice sunny day. That rock absorbs heat, and the fish like to pull up into it, and it is a good thing to fish. But just because you're fishing rock does not mean you're going to catch fish. Heck, some lakes you have are almost all rock. You go to a place like the Ozarks region, and all you have to fish is rock. Doesn't mean you're going to catch fish just because you're around rocks. So I kind of want to go over some of the key things that I look for anytime I'm fishing rock or want to be fishing rock that really help it become more productive. And I think a lot of times when you hear anglers, and I think I'm guilty of this too, when I mention I'm fishing rock, it's not just rock. I'm fishing very specific things. And I think we take it for granted sometimes that when I say I'm fishing rock, that in this case, you guys out there understand what I mean by that. So I figured I would break down some of the things that I'm looking for that might help provide some clarification that not all rock is created equal.
Today's video is brought to you by the Deep Dive app. This has had an amazing new update. As you guys know, I love the water clarity feature. As you can see right here, we're looking at Grand Lake, which just had a whole pile of rain come into it. It went from being really clear to having a lot of dirty water coming in the bottom end of it. Just an amazing feature to be able to determine where the clear water is versus the muddy water. However, they just introduced the wind effects. Now, the wind effects is really cool because we've had wind effects as part of the app in the past, but all it did is show where the wind was hitting the shoreline the most, as you can see from the dots, the orange and bright red dots, which indicate where the wind is really striking. But now the wind feature also indicates what the wave action is like on the lake itself. So some of the features you're going to get from this is determining where to get from place to place safely by avoiding the heavy, rough water conditions. You'll be able to determine where you may have some of the strongest current flow and some of the places where you can fish to stay protected. Now, along with that, you still have some of my favorite features like the patterns that you've got on the lake that indicate the best baits and lures to fish with. You've also got the water inflow app, which shows you where a bunch of the rain input comes in. That can be an amazing pattern to fish throughout the year. Just a great feature to have. So many positive features anytime you're fishing or using the Deep Dive app. Just points you in the right direction to catch more fish. Whether you're a tournament angler or a local fun fisherman that's just out to catch a few fish, the Deep Dive app will help you catch more fish next time you're out on the water.
So one of the first things that I think we need to establish is that when I say rock, and a lot of anglers talk about rock, a lot of times it's actually hard bottom. That rock could be a gravel, it could be boulders, it could be bluff walls. There's a lot of different types of rock. There's a lot of different, not just like sizes and hardness of rock, but lots of different types of rock in itself. Quartz, granite, whatever the rock is, there's a lot of different characteristics, and when I say I'm fishing rock, it's good to keep in mind that that rock could be a dark colored rock that retains more heat than something that's a light colored rock. So that you just got to recognize not all rock is rock. And and a lot of times anglers refer to hard bottom as rock when in reality it might not be the rock that you're actually thinking of. So that's just something that to be aware of. Now, having said all that, generally speaking, the bigger the rock, the better in my mind. If I can find boulders, boulders are going to be one of the key things to look for. And a lot of times those boulders are going to be amongst big areas of rock, but that boulder is really what creates that different object in there, right? It's that transition zone, and that you've got all of a sudden a big boulder that might be 3 feet by 3 feet amongst an area that's all rock. Well, the fish are going to relate to that boulder because it provides shade, it provides a home base, it provides something for that fish to relate to amongst all that other rock. So you might fish through this entire giant area of rock, and find that the fish are always relating to that one big boulder. This happens a ton in the smallmouth world. You have giant areas of rock, but the fish are really relating to that boulder. So it's important to recognize that just because you're fishing rock does not mean they're going to be there. They're actually holding to that boulder or those isolated bigger areas of or that bigger area of the boulder to the area of rock. It's just important to recognize how valuable one large rock can be. So I'm going to be looking for boulders almost anytime I'm out looking for rock. And this holds true no matter where you're at in the country. If you can find a big isolated boulder, this happens in the Ozark region, it happens up here in the North Country. Those fish relate to those boulders at a lot of times a year, especially during the pre-spawn, because those boulders are just areas where a lot of your females like to congregate. Um, One of my favorite things to fish is a big isolated boulder, and it doesn't matter if it's by itself on a sand flat or just out there in a giant rock flat. That bigger boulder is going to be a key isolated piece to fish. Now, the other thing I like to fish, and this happens a lot, is when you do have these expansive areas of rock, I like to key in just on the edge. So generally, you're talking about, a defined rock edge that the fish use as a travel route. It's really, I don't fully understand why it happens like this, but a lot of times what you'll find is a very, very defined rock edge. It's just like that's how the earth left it there, and sometimes I think at the same time I would even consider like a roadbed a rock edge, because a lot of your old roadbeds, either they were gravel or they were cement, but it's still the same. That's a type of rock, and the fish will relate to that defined rock edge. But I'm talking about where within a matter of feet, go from one bottom contour to solid rock. Those are really key in the smallmouth world. The smallmouth love to run those edges. They love to spawn on those edges. I've seen the same thing happen with spotted bass. I've seen the same thing happen with largemouth. So one of the things I'm always looking for if I'm fishing around rock is a very defined rock edge. That's one of the keys. Now, you've also got rock transitions. Rock transition is somewhat similar in that you're going from one bottom composition to rock, but a rock transition a lot of times is one rock type to another rock type. Real common in the Ozark region. You might have pea gravel that goes into bigger rock. A lot of times these rock transitions are based on contour line changes. So you might have a channel swing bank where you go from bluffy stuff to smaller rock. There's something going on with the composition of the bottom that leads to there being a rock transition zone. And you hear the idea of the rock transition all the time. And it really is just one rock type to another rock type. Sometimes it's from that bubble lava type rock to just basic white rock. Maybe it's you see it a lot of times with like bridge causeways where you'll have some natural rock a lot of times where they built that bridge, but then it transitions to like just the riprap that they put down when they built the bridge. And a lot of times that little rock transition is one of the key places. It's just important to recognize that you can take a big expansive stretch of shoreline and all of a sudden pick out the rock transition, and a lot of times that's where the fish are going to be. And it has more to do with the change in the bottom composition and the change in whatever's happening there, whether you have a point coming out or a channel swing. There's generally something more that's going on there. That's actually what the fish are relating to, more so than just going from one type of rock to the next. But it's important to recognize that that's an easy way to tell that there is something different going on there, is the fact that the rock composition changed. So I'm always looking for rock transitions. It's a staple in the Ozark region, but it's a staple anywhere in the country. Great Lakes are the same way, where you run into that quite a bit. Um, so something else that I'm always looking for with respect to fishing rock, and this is a lot of times more with like your desert lakes or areas where you have more bluff, is not necessarily just the rock itself, but the shade lines that the rock is creating. So if you have a bluff wall where you've got big, giant, chunky rocks where there's big cracks in it that the fish can get into, or you just have a big, tall bluff where there's a nice shade line that's being cast out from that rock wall, maybe 15 or 20 feet out, it's really critical to recognize those shade lines that are in relation to that giant rock. Same way if you're going down a bank and there's a bush that's creating a little shady spot, the fish relate to that the same way they relate to the shadow being cast off a bluff wall or a big giant boulder. So it's really important to recognize how valuable that can be. But the other thing to note is how that changes with sun position. One of the things I love to do when I have gone out and fished the U.S. Open on some of those desert lakes is, you make note of, okay, at 10 o'clock, this is where your better shade areas are going to be. At noon, you might go to that same rock and it doesn't have the shade line that you want, but you need to have more areas for noon that have certain shade lines that are best at noon or 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock. It's just really important to pay attention to that. But just because you have a shade line there in the morning, generally you're not going to have a shade line there in the afternoon because of the rotation of the sun. So you want to pay major attention to that. The other key I'm going to tell you is anytime you're fishing rock, if you have the potential to fish areas where you have rock that meet grass, some form of weed, generally if you're talking milfoil or hydrilla, these are key areas to fish. There is just something special about where you get a rock and grass mixture that not just bass, all game fish, all bait fish, everything loves. And I think it's just because it just brings together so many different things that they're just full of life and great areas to fish. So don't ever pass up an area where you have some grass and some rock bottom. But these are the simple things that I look for anytime I'm fishing rock. Rock, it's easy to say I was fishing rock. It's just like if you're fishing, grass. Well, you can say you're fishing grass, but on a grass lake, that doesn't really help you at all in terms of breaking it down. Rock is the same way. You have a lot of lakes that have a ton of rock in it. You got to be able to figure out how to break it down and efficiently fish all of this rock in the lake to your high percentage spots. If you can figure out the high percentage spots, you make 10 times more casts in high percentage areas. You're going to catch a ton more fish than you would just going down a rock bank. So hopefully you found this helpful. If you did, hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. That would mean a lot to me because I know a lot of you guys out there are not actually subscribed to the channel, but watch on a pretty regular basis. We're trying to get to 100,000 at this point. We're probably still a couple of years off. So it'd be cool if you help me out and cut that down to maybe a year and a half instead of 2 years. All you gotta do is hit the subscriber button. Anyways, thanks for watching. Stay tuned. We'll have a new video coming out tomorrow for you.